Welcome back to day two of our first TVET Technical Policy Dialogue with the theme ASEAN Skilled for the Future, Digital Transformation and the Future of Skills. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to hear valuable presentations and insights from our partners and stakeholders across the ASEAN member states. The discussions gave us better understanding of how digital transformation and emerging technologies are shaping the future of skills and TVET in the region. To give us a brief recap and highlight the key points from day one, may I now call on Ms. Pamela Grafilo to take the virtual floor. Ms. Pamela, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Anne. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to day two of our policy dialogue. Yesterday, we looked at the impact of digital transformation on jobs, skills, and TVET, and we heard global and regional interventions. We learned from international initiatives, and we saw how member states are already responding. Day one helped us understand what needs to change. And today, we ask can ASEAN support the change to happen? We move through three steps: understand what is changing, learn from what is working, and identify where ASEAN can act to support. Let me bring Let me briefly bring together the day one story before we move to today's agenda. Next slide, please. I think it's the previous slide. Yeah, all right, thank you. Six messages stood out yesterday. First, jobs are changing. AI and digital technologies are changing tasks within occupations, so workers need to be prepared not only for new jobs, but for changing roles and continuous transitions. Second, skills must keep pace. Digital and technical skills are important, but these are not enough. Workers also need problem solving, critical thinking, communication, teamwork, and adaptability. Third, TVET must become more agile. Skills intelligence needs to connect much faster to standards, curricula, training, and employment. Fourth, we need to transform systems, not simply introduce technology. Digital tools need governance, capable institutions, quality assurance, and people who know how to use them. Fifth, industry and social partners must be part of the solution as active co-developers of skills. And sixth, inclusion and responsible AI must be built in from the onset. These are not add-ons. They are part of how we design the transformation. Next slide, please. Across the presentations, we also saw a common direction emerging. It starts with skills intelligence. We need to see how jobs and skills demand are changing, but intelligence only creates value when we act on it. So the signal needs to move into standards and curricula. Those standards then need to translate into training and assessment. And ultimately, training must connect people to employment and workforce transitions. UNESCO showed the potential of more timely skills intelligence. ILO's DISCO showed how skills intelligence, standards, and instructional design can be connected. Malaysia, in its presentation, showed how skills intelligence, standards, and instructional design can be connected. It also showed a similar closed loop approach from intelligence to validation to training to placement and back again to intelligence and so forth. The important shift is therefore from periodic adjustment to a continuous evidence to action cycle. Next slide, please. This brings us to the regional dimension. Member states will take different pathways as may be both necessary and appropriate. But countries do not need to make this transition alone. ASEAN can add value in four practical ways. It can help make learning faster by sharing experience and implementation lessons. It can create platforms to share capabilities, include tools, technical expertise, and learning resources. It can help improve comparability and portability of skills and qualifications. And it can definitely help reduce duplication, particularly where approaches or regional platforms make sense. Brunei, and if we can borrow from Brunei once again, gave us a useful principle. Comparable enough to learn together, flexible enough to remain locally useful and relevant. This could be a useful way to think about ASEAN cooperation. In the next slide, if transformation is to happen, three priority areas have been identified. First, we need the right enabling environment. Day one raised several issues: policy coherence, institutional coordination, responsible AI, data governance, standards and credentials, interoperability, and inclusion. The challenge is to find the right balance. We need governance that is agile enough to enable innovation, but it must also be strong enough to protect quality, trust, and ensure inclusion. So the question is, what policy and governance reforms should ASEAN prioritize at the national and at the regional level? And importantly, where would regional cooperation add value beyond what member states can do individually? In the next slide, we see that the second priority area is on operationalization and partnership. Yesterday's country experiences gave us several useful lessons. Brunei, for instance, showed the importance of assessing readiness before investing. Digital readiness is not only about technology, it also depends on processes, governance, people, and institutional capability. The Philippines, through Kigaling, showed how AI can be integrated into existing TVET processes, but human review and industry validation remain essential. Malaysia, for its part, demonstrated how skills intelligence, industry validation, training, and placement can operate as a connected system. And ILO and ETF showed how regional platforms and partnerships can help countries share capability and scale innovation. So implementation requires much more than technology. It requires capable institutions and trainers, quality assurance, human oversight, industry participation, shared resources, and effective partnerships. So today's question is, what capabilities and partnerships can take these promising initiatives to transformation at scale? And if we look at the next slide, The third priority area is on financing and sustainability. A clear message from day one is that we should not finance technology alone. The real investment requirement is much broader. It includes not only connectivity but infrastructure as well. It also includes data system, institutional capacity, trainers, skills intelligence, standards and curricula, quality assurance, maintenance, and of course, continuous upgrading. So digital transformation is therefore not a one-time capital investment. It requires sustained investment. And day one also pointed two opportunities. The first is co-funding. Industry and partners can share responsibility for developing the workforce they need. The second is regional sharing, and this is where ASEAN can really serve as a platform where not every country needs to build every capability independently. So the question we need to ponder this afternoon: how do we sustainably finance the capabilities and ecosystems required for the continuous digital transformation? And finally, we arrive at today's task. We have three priority areas, but one transformation agenda. Policy and governance creates the enabling environment. Operationalization and partnerships turn that environment into institutional practice. And financing and sustainability make transformation possible over the long term. So across these three discussions, four principles must be kept in view: inclusion, responsible AI, industry engagement, and of course, regional cooperation. Our task today is to move the evidence and lessons from yesterday to action. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pen. Building on the presentations and discussions from day one, the next presentation will bring together the key insights on the impacts of digital transformation on labor markets, skills, and TVET systems across ASEAN. It will highlight the emerging opportunities, challenges, and strategic priorities for accelerating digital transformation, including policy and governance, digital technologies, institutional capacity, financing, public and private partnerships, and regional cooperation. It will also provide the strategic context and common reference point for the policy roundtables, where participants will examine these priority areas in greater depth, and identify practical recommendations to strengthen digital transformation and to future-ready TVET systems across ASEAN. At this juncture, allow me to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Wu Wenxi is a research fellow for the UNESCO Chair on Digitalization in Tibet at Shenzhen Polytechnic University in China. Her work focuses on policy and practice in the digital transformation of Tibet, with particular interests in institutional change, teacher development, and the implications of artificial intelligence for skills development. She has contributed to UNESCO and UNESCO Univoc initiatives and knowledge products, including a recently published UNESCO practical guide on integrating AI in Tibet. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of virtual applause for Dr. Wu Wenxi, Program Specialist, UNESCO Chair Tibet Digitalization at Shenzhen Polytechnic University, China. Ms. Wenxi, the virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I hope you can hear me clearly. Thank you for the kind introduction, and many thanks to TESDA and the GIZ Record Twin for inviting me to join this policy dialogue. It's a pleasure to be with you for the second day. I was also very glad to have the chance to listen to yesterday's sessions. So my task today is to build on those discussions and consider what strategic priorities for digital transformation in Tibet has emerged, particularly in the ASEAN context. Right. So just now we heard from Pamela about key insights of day one. So probably I would just skip that and go directly into how we understand digital transformation and how to set the priorities. So to frame these priorities more systematically, I would first like to look briefly at the conceptual scope of digital transformation, existing policy directions, evidence on readiness, and the implementation experience. So let me start with the first. This UNESCO framework on digital transformation can take place at different levels within TVET providers, across teaching and learning processes, and in a wider education and labor market ecosystem. It also cuts across different areas, including technology, curriculum and qualification, teaching and learning, and institutional sustainability and resilience. So for our discussion today, this gives us a useful map as it helps us to see what the priorities need to be taken into account across different parts of the TVET system. Now, could you please move to the next slide? Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. I think it is not showing on my side. Yes, good. Thank you. Now, the second source for identifying the priorities is the policy landscape. Since this is a policy dialogue, I think it is useful to first see some convergences in the directions being set globally and within ASEAN. Well, I will not go through these frameworks one by one. You might be familiar with some of this. What is more relevant is that several themes appear repeatedly across them. For example, we see a strong focus on inclusion and digital access, skills intelligence and lifelong learning, governance, quality, and financing, and increasingly the responsible and human-centered use of AI, data governance, and interoperability. Within ASEAN, so these themes are also reflected in the Digital Master Plan, the ASEAN TVET Council Work Plan, and the ASEAN Guide on AI Governance and Ethics. So there is already a substantial policy basis to build on. For us now, the question is how these broad directions can be turned into conditions, the enabling conditions that TVET system need in order to implement digital transformation more effectively and sustainably. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, the third source is what the evidence tells us about current digital readiness. The two sources here look at the ASEAN digital ecosystem and institutional digital readiness, and they give us some indications of where the current constraints may lie. For example, on the left, the new ASEAN Digital Integration Index 2.0, you can see among its 6 pillars shown on this table, digital skills and talent is the lowest scoring pillar in this index. This is a fairly broad measure because it looks not only at the digital skills in the population, but also at areas such as STEM talent, knowledge-intensive employment, R&D collaborations, and the relevance of the graduate skills to business needs. So this points to a broader skills and talent challenge within the regional digital ecosystem. On the right, the Smart Education Readiness Index was 3, give us a closer institutional view. And we heard already from yesterday, Dr. Sheikh Lukman from Brunei on how Brunei is already using Siri in practice. Here, I'm drawing on a separate ILO study that applied the framework across TVET institutions in Southeast Asia. Across the 3 dimensions, as you can see, process, technology, and organization. The results show different levels of digital readiness. For example, infrastructure is relatively stronger compared with the others, while specialized curriculum integration and some more advanced technology areas score lower. and you can learn more details from the original report on ILO's website. So these sources highlight the digital readiness gaps at different levels, and these gaps also need to be taken into account when setting priorities for digital transformation in TVET. Next slide, please. Thank you. Another perspective is from the implementation practices. We can see that across Southeast Asia, there is already a broad range of digital transformation activities going on in TVET. I have loosely grouped a few examples here to show that breadth. That includes, for example, regional platforms for knowledge sharing and skills development, digitalization of TVET services and curriculum development, industry-linked programs, and institutional initiatives around digital capability and learning environments. Some are focused on specific functions, such as curriculum and standard development or job matching. Others work more closely with industry partnerships or regional cooperation. So the ASEAN region is already accumulating quite a lot of practical experience, and this gives us an important starting point. The task is not just to generate more initiatives, but to consider what conditions will help existing and future efforts become more effective, better connected, more scalable, and sustainable over time. Next slide, please. Thank you. Along yesterday's discussions, these perspectives we looked at also helped bring into focus several recurring challenges. For example, one is that digital readiness remains uneven across different levels of the TVET system, both within and across countries. At the same time, skills and occupational requirements are changing quickly. This puts pressure on TVET systems to respond faster than before. And as AI use expands, questions about quality, trust, and responsible use of technology becomes more consequential and realistic. And the implementation for TVET can also be difficult when different responsibilities are spread across institutions, the private sector, and the government. Last but not least, digital transformation requires sustainable resources and inclusive access. So these challenges also help sharpen what the priority areas needs to address. Next slide, please. So against this broader background, this policy dialogue focuses on 4 strategic priorities: policy and governance, institutional transformation and partnerships, financing and sustainability, and regional cooperation. So of course, these are all broad areas. I will take them one by one and focus on some issues within them. Next slide, please. The first priority is policy and governance. The overall idea here is that the governance needs to be able to adapt, build trust, and connect systems. I will just highlight these 3. I think that is very important. Adaptive governance is important because technologies and skills requirements will continue to change, and the occupations change within them and with them. Policies and regulatory frameworks also needs mechanisms for more regular review and adjustment. And also, better skills intelligence can, of course, provide earlier signals, but they also need to be ways for these signals to inform the standards, qualifications, and the wider policy decisions in a timely way. And as digital and AI-enabled systems become more widely used, trusted governance also becomes increasingly important. For example, the ASEAN Guide on AI Governance and Ethics already provides some useful regional reference. They have principles set out such as transparency and explainability, human centrality, privacy and data governance, and accountability and integrity. It also gives us explicit attention to the level of human involvement in AI-supported decision-making. So these are all areas that need to be considered in the governance of digital transformation of TVET. Another important point is connected governance. Because nowadays standards, qualifications, credentials, and digital systems of various kinds increasingly need to work across institutional sectoral, and national boundaries. This means creating formal links between different systems. For example, school curriculum need to be connected more directly with occupational standards and qualifications, which often change faster than the schools. And industry certifications needs to be integrated into formal TVET pathways, and the mutual recognition of these certifications can be strengthened across institutions and countries. So the point is to make different systems easier to connect and recognize the results of one another. Next slide, please. The second priority is institutional transformation and partnerships. An important place to start and consistently review is the strategic vision and leadership, because it is important for institutions to be clear about the purpose, why they are integrating digital technologies and AI for what purposes, and how this can support the real educational value and the mission of the institution and their role in the labor market. Especially leadership teams need sufficient digital and AI competencies in the first place, even before we talk about digital competencies of educators and students. Leaderships need to make informed decisions and understand especially the trade-offs and the realistic challenges that could happen during the digital transformation, and then guide the organizational changes. And this vision then needs to be turned into readiness-based implementation, because digital transformation does not need to happen everywhere at the same time. Institutions need to understand what capacity is already in place, where the main gaps are, and sequence the implementation accordingly. This also means building on systems and practices that are already working, rather than replacing them simply because there is a new technology becoming available. And importantly, this links closely to participatory transformation. Teachers, trainers, and learners, especially our young people, should have a meaningful role and voice in shaping how technologies are used and introduced in the system. Industry engagement is particularly important in TVET. The relevant industry in different sectors should be embedded across the whole skills development cycle, from skills intelligence to curriculum and qualification development, and to work-based learning and assessment. Other ecosystem partners, including technology providers and the development partners and the communities, also have roles in supporting institutional change. Next slide, please. The third priority is financing and sustainability. Here, the question goes beyond how much funding is available. We also need to consider where investment goes and where it can be sustained over time. Several points are important. The first is whole system investment. It means looking beyond infrastructure and technology, because digital transformation also requires investment in people and institutions, including the organizational changes needed to integrate technologies effectively into teaching and institutional processes. At the same time, investment needs to be strategic and inclusive. Of course, resources may be needed to support innovation and scaling, but investment also has to address gaps in digital access and institutional capacity building, especially where there are differences in who is able to participate. And then sustainable financing partnerships are also important, because transformation usually draws on contributions from several actors, including government, institutions, and the private sector, as well as from development partners. The key is to align these different contributions around long-term priorities and be clear about their shared responsibilities, particularly for the costs that continue after the initial investments. And there is also another dimension to sustainability, that is resource-conscious technology use. Compatibility is important, as it affects whether existing resources can continue to be used. Reuse and shared use also can reduce duplication, and energy consumption and e-waste issues are also deserving our attention as the digital infrastructure and hardware expand. Next slide, please. The fourth priority is regional cooperation. One area with considerable potential is regional intelligence, as we heard from yesterday a lot. A stronger regional evidence base on changing skills demand and institutional readiness can make it easier to identify common trends and compare evidence across countries. And it could also provide a stronger basis for policy development. Another important area to develop is digital public goods. There's a scope to develop learning tools and platforms, as well as other resources that different TVET systems can adapt to their own context and continue developing on their own. The value of the digital public goods depends partly on whether they can work across different settings, but also on having appropriate governance and national ownership for the development of the goods. A further opportunity is cross-regional co-development. We know that Asia's digital TVET initiatives can connect very well with other regions and global networks. This is also what we hope to facilitate through our UNESCO Chair and UNIVOC network. It is valuable that we learn from each other and co-develop solutions to the challenges we face together in the age of AI. Next slide, please. So let me close by connecting these priorities to the roundtables that follow. So as Pamela introduced, in the first roundtable will focus on enabling policy and governance environment. The second will look at implementation through institutional operationalization and partnerships. And the third will consider financing and sustainability issues. Regional cooperation will be a focus that cut across all three roundtables. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I hope we'll have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wenshi, for your presentation. One important takeaway from the presentation is that digital transformation in TVET requires more than just technology. It calls for clear policies, strong institutions and partnerships, sustainable investment, and regional cooperation so that our TVET systems can keep pace with changing skills needs. Now we move on to the second portion of this program, the Policy Roundtable discussions. Utilizing a parallel session format, the session shall examine the structural pillars of a resilient digital ecosystem, focusing on policy frameworks, public-private partnerships, and sustainable infrastructure investment. For the mechanics of the Policy Roundtable discussion, you have been pre-assigned to join one of the three policy roundtables, as flashed on the screen. Roundtable 1 will be on policy and governance. Roundtable 2 shall focus on operationalization and partnerships, while Roundtable 3 will cover financing and sustainability. Participants will remain in their assigned breakout room for full 60-minute discussion. For those who have not been pre-assigned, please feel free to join the roundtable topic of your choice. The technical team shall assist in moving you to the breakout rooms. Each roundtable will be guided by a facilitator and will designate a rapporteur. The discussion will focus on identifying practical actions that ASEAN can take to advance digital transformation and strengthen TVET systems. What should be the output? Each roundtable will identify issues, challenges, or gaps and work toward 3 to 5 priority recommendations that are specific, practical, actionable, forward-looking, and more importantly, relevant to ASEAN cooperation. The recommendations will be presented by the designated rapporteur during the plenary session. To help shape our insights and recommendations, we are honored to be guided by our expert facilitators this afternoon. For Policy Roundtable 1, Policy and Governance, this will be facilitated by Mr. Edwin Tan. Mr. Edwin Tan leads the Center for Skills First Practices at the Institute for Adult Learning in Singapore as a director. He champions the adoption of skills first practices in human capital development and optimization by planners, hirers, and trainers. Edwin has more than 15 years of experience in the education and training sector, with stints in the policy making, manpower planning, program formulation, skills development, and business development. For Policy Roundtable 2, Operationalization and Partnership, this will be facilitated by Professor Rosa Andre Azmara. Professor Rosa Andre Azmara is currently a professor bringing extensive academic and practical expertise in advanced technologies. His primary teaching and research areas encompass artificial intelligence, machine learning, image processing, and computer vision. Beyond his academic research, he is a prolific innovator who has
Hello.
Hello, sorry about that challenge with our technical. Allow me to continue. He is a prolific innovator who has secured over 20 intellectual property rights for various computer programs, ranging from advanced facial recognition, architectures to spatial mapping and tracking applications. For Policy Roundtable 3, Financing and Sustainability, this will be facilitated by Ms. Sambat Heng. Sambat Heng serves as the manager of the strategy division of Skills Development Fund Cambodia resources in transferring you to your respective breakout rooms. Please be informed that the Policy Roundtable is a closed session for ASEAN TVET Council members and Philippine national government agencies. We kindly request participants who are not joining the roundtable to return to the main room at exactly 4:30, 4:10 Philippine time. Thank you for your kind cooperation.
excuse me. I'm still in the main room. I'm the facilitator in policy roundtable 3.
Or pa-in dito? Pa-out dito.
Out dito.
Oo. Itong, ano, diba? Itong AUX out to, di ba? Ang AUX out.
Sorry, nagsasalita ako.
Kaya nga. Yun ang problema eh. Ayun, no? Test. Test. Check one. Ay, maganda na. Check 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
group and discussion.
Neglecting the essential cognitive and socio-emotional competencies. At the national level, ASEAN member states may focus on capacitating the trainers through the training the trainers modules or institutionalize a trainer-learner coaching and mentoring mechanism so that there should be a feedback loop between the trainer and the trainee on what could be improved in the program design, assessments, or at the delivery of the training modules. There should also be a centralizing policy and governance for TVET systems to address the unbalanced skilled instruction. At the regional level, ASEAN may look into mobilizing the resource among ASEAN member states, and ASEAN may also develop modules corresponding to the assessment tools for the cognitive and social emotional skills, especially that the use of artificial intelligence could affect the interpersonal skills and soft skills of the trainees or the individuals in the long term. Another issue that our group identified is, next slide please, is the persistent digital divide, wherein rural workers, MSMEs, informal laborers, older adults, persons with disabilities, and highly vulnerable female workers face severe barriers accessing digital training. At the national level, ASEAN member states may increase or improve their digital infrastructure in rural areas through partnerships with government agencies or with the private sector to bridge the digital access gap for the vulnerable sector, including the PWDs. Most especially that in rural areas, there is a lack of digital infrastructure that could facilitate the access to internet of these workers or individuals. And because there is a lack of digital literacy, hence the skills gap, ASEAN member states may provide a subsidized training for the digital fluency skills of these vulnerable population. And then after, these individuals could be capacitated with the AI and the AI related skills. Since we're also experiencing the demographic transition in the labor market, there is a need to promote age inclusive trainings in our TVET systems, and that we should also mainstream gender, especially that one of the vulnerable sectors are the females that lack access to these types of training. So these are the top three recommendations and issues identified by our group a while ago. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing the questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nicole. Now, the table is open for questions, clarifications for Roundtable Group 1. Are there any questions or clarifications from the other attendees to what Ms. Nicole has provided us? Her team can join in when clarifications need to be made. Thank you. Yes, Ma'am Michelle Alarcon.
Hi, hello, our friends from TESDA. Just curious how exactly these, because they seem to be, at least to me, um suggestions or ideas on how to address the gaps, right? But in terms of policy per se, so for example, the recommendation on digital infrastructure, so the policy, specific policy is, I don't imagine it like mandating government to, I don't know, set a set budget for digital infrastructure, or maybe, I'm just not clear on the translation to policy. Thank you.
Some
Yes,
of
Ma'am
our
Nicole.
members could also chime in on the idea. Providing access to these digital trainings or digital infrastructure can be implemented at the local government units. The LGUs can provide partnerships with regional offices, or for instance, here in the Philippines, the Information Communications Technology department, and so that they could provide digital literacy training to the vulnerable populations, especially in the rural areas. And for instance, in some cases, we could expand the digital access to those in geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. Ultimately, it's the LGUs that need to have a partnership with the regional offices of the DICT or the ICT communications offices of other ASEAN member states. In also improving the digital infrastructure is a public investment. Again, it also goes on the purview of the LGUs. But since it also needs financing, um, we could start our promotion of digital inclusivity and public infrastructure on improving the digital access by providing technical assistance to these LGUs on how they can start to increase their digital infrastructure funds or implementation of this procurement project. Maybe for if other members of our group can also chime in, or if you have any ideas from other ASEAN member states as well.
Yeah, maybe as a as a facilitator, I'll just chime in to to help out a bit. And I think when we talk about policy decisions, it's also to see where, to some extent, government needs to come in to intervene because there's market failure, right? And I think what we're trying to do here, providing digital access to the more vulnerable groups, the rural community, and then subsidizing training. I don't think this market will sort of close those gaps on their own, right? That is where I think policies, government need to enact some of these policies to come in to address some of these market failures. So that's where we're coming from. I suppose the group is coming from the policy point of view to address market failures.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the clarification is more around how it is phrased. If it's policy recommendation, then you know, well, more concerned with ours look like yours. Many of the ideas that we put together is for operationalization, which is, kind of moving forward, right? So maybe the expectation is that there is specific policy phrasing
Mm.
as an output. But yeah, so totally agree on giving digital access and things like that. But in the form of policy, maybe is how maybe what I was looking for specifically. But I got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question from our participants? Clarifications that you would like to raise? Thank you, Ma'am Michelle Alarcon, for your question.
You may remove me na po sa spotlight. Nakaka-conscious.
Are there any other questions or clarifications to Roundtable Group 1? We will also check the chat box. Maybe there are questions that were submitted through the chat box. So far, no questions po on the chat box. So if there are no other questions, can we now, any final words, Ma'am Nicole?
Thank you po, Ma'am Annalisa. None on my end. Thank you.
What about from the other, no more questions or clarification from the other ASEAN member states? Okay, so if there are none, thank you very much to Roundtable 1. Thank you for your presentation. Now we can move on to the second group, the Roundtable Session 2. May we invite Ma'am Michelle Alarcon? I believe
Yeah.
you be the
Thank you.
rapporteur. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah, if you can have the deck flash lang for our output. So roundtable 2 is about operationalization and partnerships, specifically to address the same challenges that was presented earlier. No? So if we may have the slide. Thank you. So as like the first roundtable, if there is a policy that will require alignment on, let's say, the curriculum design and so on and so forth, right? And the partnerships with industry to keep it updated and so on and so forth, to operationalize that and to sustain the partnerships, we are recommending that there be a concept of like an industry board. And this is also patterned after Australia's sector skills councils. And in the Philippines, the Analytics and AI Association, for example, is as a real example of a functioning industry board that is connected with a TVET, so that we can provide updates to the needs of the industry for digital skills. And that there could be that not knowledge exchange per se, but coming up with curriculum design for digital skills that are needed. So if we do it one off, obviously, just like a project, it will not work, because we know that digital skills continue to evolve, AI and things like that. So we definitely need a mechanism to sort of solidify, that partnership. And we see that maybe in other countries there could also be the concept of industry boards for TVET, and this kind of partnership is established. We also want to make sure that there are like what was shared earlier, there is an automated update coming from, let's say, big data and and other related technologies, so that other labor market information can be infused into the curriculum. The data is going to be readily available for planning, for program review, and so on and so forth. While we did not explicitly put here the levels of action, we envision that these done at the national level, at each of the national level. But overall, for the region, for the ASEAN, we are proposing a council for digital skills framework, which is going to be at the granular level of specific competencies, proficiency levels, and skills that allows us to also address the next challenge, which is the portability of skills. So that's a way to sort of tie all these challenges up with one recommendation. The next page, please. So on balanced skill instruction, how we can actually have this as a sustainable mechanism, because we know that, as mentioned earlier also by the first team, we need to also get feedback mechanism from get a feedback from the existing TVET trainers that we have. But then we have to acknowledge that these skills that may be brought about by AI, by pandemic, and then everything else that's happening in the recent past. So this has produced, maybe a different need or demand for a certain way of teaching, and therefore the way that our TVET trainers, their style of teaching, their pedagogy may not anymore be as relevant or as effective as for the new generation of learners that we have. So instead of just sticking to that and continuing to add to what they need to teach, they themselves have to develop the ability to also develop their non-technical skills, and so that they can also teach it. So it's like a train the TVET trainers training. But we know that this could be a scarce resource all across ASEAN. So we would like that at the national and the regional level, both, we maybe can share resources on who these trainers could be, that could also look after developing our TVET trainers to learn these new non-technical skills in the way that they teach, so that it can address holistically the needs of the new learners. And in the next page, just moving forward with our material, the persistent digital divide. So again, this is because this is persistent, we already know, and we haven't solved it. And I think that the gap is even widening when we talk about the digital divide in the age of AI. So what we propose to do, so that it is also long term, that we can sustain these efforts, again, as was presented earlier already, for in terms of solutions, we have a regular digital readiness assessment. So it's not just the digital infrastructure, which obviously is still a problem across many countries in the ASEAN, but also the digital learning skills or their receptiveness of both learners and teachers before we do digital training. So this can be part of a regular program. So before we conduct these digital trainings, we have set up the readiness assessment in all aspects, in all kinds of readiness, right? But there are also other solutions in different countries already to to address these, and we can look at them as like pilot solutions to address the digital divide, such as what was shared earlier, having community-based digital access hubs, and maybe across ASEAN, we can share what has worked, what such pilot projects, for examples, have worked in, for example, have worked in other countries, in certain regions, maybe in far-flung, remote areas, what doesn't work. And across ASEAN, this could be, really a topic or an action item that we really need to commit to in terms of solving it once and for all, because again, we said it's just going to be wider and wider as technology evolves. So, and then we can learn from each other, but also that we need to, and then later on, we don't know the solution yet, but these are efforts to try to understand, to better understand if our efforts are actually effective, right? And then just similar to our previous recommendation, a train the TVET trainer program, which is very specific to understanding the needs and the how do we change the way of teaching for persons with disabilities, for older adults, the what we call like the market that TVET may not be usually used to attracting, or they're not ready to attract yet. I don't know, but definitely it's not the same way in terms of teaching our learners right now, our TVET learners. So they may not know how to do that. Like, how do you teach computer or digital literacy to someone who is hearing disability, or and obviously challenged with sight, right? So there are different ways to teach different types of persons with disabilities, and older adults may need to have more hand holding and things like that. So our TVET trainers will need to also be trained on the other ways of teaching to accommodate also the other sectors, other marginalized sectors, right? So again, this is a shared because the resources for training the trainers could also be very scarce. So we are hoping that we can also share these pool of experts at the ASEAN level. Okay, next page, please. Okay, last is, and this is related anyway to our first recommendation, which is on addressing the role of, lack of cross-border recognition first. So this is, again, leading to the other proposed recommendation, which is having a common framework for skills, for technical skills. It could be a common ASEAN technical skills framework, our digital skills framework across ASEAN, so that the skills are portable. We can also design our micro-credentials a similar way. But then at the end of it, we have a similar competency assessment as well as certifications, so that we can also, it's easier for us to share regional resources, for example, or have similar qualifications for the new jobs that are being designed. Okay, next, and the last slide is on passive industry role and how we want to operationalize the partnership, is to have that industry advisory boards established. So first at the national level, and then at the regional level, we can have a network of industry boards with TVET. And hopefully that is, and then that's going to be not just coming from the private sector, but also including academic sector. And I think that is the last detailed slide on our recommendations, so that our top, it's not top three, so all those, I think I didn't count, but I think there were more than five. But I think we're open to questions, but essentially it's having a common skills framework for technical and digital skills, coming up with industry boards, and in that kind of partnership with TVET, also at the ASEAN Council, at the ASEAN level, and then train the trainers for the new skills, the non-technical skills, as well as how to teach different type of pedagogy for those that have different needs for the marginalized sectors, and making our digital skills training more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Michelle, for your presentation. Now we are opening the floor for questions, clarifications for Roundtable 2 presentation. Are there any questions or clarifications? We would like to inform everyone that we will be sharing in a common drive a copy of the presentation of each group. And then we will be also giving you until September 3 to submit your comments, so that the Secretariat will have ample time also to process all the comments that we will receive. But going back, do we have any questions or clarifications to the presentation of Roundtable 2? So we see no raised hands. So the presentation is clear. I believe everybody supports the recommendation of Roundtable Group 2. No? So Ma'am Michelle, any final words for our participants?
Great team.
Thank you, Ma'am Michelle. Congratulations to you and to, of course, Roundtable 1. Okay, now, thank you. We'll move on to our final presenter from the Policy Roundtable 3 on financing and sustainability. May we now hear from the rapporteur of Breakout Session 3, Ma'am Vina from Timor-Leste. You may now have the virtual floor, ma'am. Once again, may we request the rapporteur of the Financing and Sustainability Roundtable Group, Breakout Session Group 3, Ma'am Lidvina of Timor-Leste. May we request the facilitator of financing and sustainability,
Yes.
Ma'am Sambat of Cambodia.
Yes, sure. So I hope you hear me well.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So this is Sambat, a facilitator of Policy Roundtable 3 on financing and sustainability. So on behalf of the team, I would like to briefly present about the finding. So can you go to next page? Yes, so in our discussion, we have identified four gaps, and also we provide some contact and key recommendation as well during our discussion. So as you can see on the screen, one of the first issue and gap that we could identify is on policy funding misalignment. It's actually shared by our colleague from Timor-Leste, as she mentioned about the misalignment between policy design and also implementation. So she explained that policy quality assurance and funding come from different institutions. So it's create a silo approach between the implementation and also budget support allocation as well. So our key recommendation during the discussion is to ensure that policy design and financing is under clearer joint planning so that the fund can directly support the TVET priority and also actual need as well. And this is, of course, the national level only for this action. The second point that we have discussed is on capacity building is only supported case by case. Of course, this also shared by our Timor-Leste team as well. She mentioned the training provider that want to get some support on capacity building for the trainer in digital skill, need to prepare the proposal or ad hoc request to ensure that there are proper support from the government. So on that note, there is no system-wide or predictable mechanism that could support the trainer in order to upskill themselves. So our recommendation is to establish a more predictable funding window or a well-structured capacity building scheme for training provider, assessor, and also relevant sector skill organization as well. And this is, of course, we believe that we need to do it at the national level. Next. The third one, interestingly, we also highlight the same issue on over-reliance on a single source of funding in order to support digital transformation in TVET. Back here, actually, there is two members, including me, sharing a similar experience that currently in developing countries, specifically like Cambodia, we rely more on government source of fund and donor. So the enterprise, of course, they benefit from the fund to upgrade their skill, their trainer in digital and related skill, but there is less contribution or their contribution is in terms of voluntary basis, not compulsory. Back on that note as well, a member from Semio, Brunei, also highlight the available source of grant that they support as the international donor fund. So on this point, we believe that there is no sustainability if the fund is only dominantly rely on a single source. So our recommendation is that moving forward, there must be a co-financing model that, of course, combine the government fund, the enterprise private sector support donor, as well as other partner contribution to ensure a clearer path for sustainability. And this, of course, should be done at the national and also regional level. Last but not least, a fragmented ecosystem with coordination. So this was shared by a college from GIZ, and she really highlight strongly on digital transformation should not focus on just technology or hardware, like the wrap-up session mentioned as well on the last slide. We believe that it's more than just the hardware or ecosystem. Yes, yes. It more than just technology or hardware. We need to think of an holistic approach, which is the system-wide readiness. So on that note, our recommendation is that it's better to think of the solution as a holistic ecosystem with a stronger coordinating body. And we believe that on this point, it's better to promote the role of ASEAN TVET Council because of the council could coordinate, could share material knowledge from other partners, and last but not least, of course, could coordinate across ASEAN country. And this must be done at the, of course, regional level and also national level. That should be all because of what we discuss is on when we discuss the level of action in this table, as you can see. So I'm happy to answer to any question, and I hope my team in Roundtable 3 also will share more thought as well in case I miss any information on what we propose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sambath. Now we open the floor for questions or clarifications from the other ASEAN member states and all the participants. Are there no questions or clarifications? Okay, once again, we would like to repeat that we will be sharing the presentation materials of all the groups. It will be shared to all the participants. If you missed to submit your comments or clarification at this time, you may still submit until September 3. Okay, thank you. Are there no other questions? Oh, we see one post in the chat box from Sambat. It's from Mr. Abubakar Ilahan. Okay.
Yes.
He said, I commend the team for recommending the co-financing models.
Yes.
Any other comments? Okay. If there are no other comments, I would like to thank Ma'am Sambat Heng for the presentation of the output of breakout session group 3. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights and the recommendations from the group. Yeah, at this point, may we call on Ms. Pamela Grafilo to also share the indicative recommendations emanating from the inputs of day one to complement the results of the roundtable discussion. Ms. Pamela, you may now have the virtual floor.
Good afternoon once again. Please, we beg your indulgence. We are over time for a few minutes. Um, so I will try to revisit the key inputs from day one. If we could flash the presentation, please. Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear me? So are we okay? Can you hear me? Thank you very much. So from the discussions in day one, we have put together a set of indicative recommendations across the three priority areas as well. Hopefully, This will provide an additional lens for looking at the recommendations that we have just presented. Some of the day one recommendations have already been echoed in the presentations in plenary, but we are optimistic that hopefully they can complement, reinforce what the groups have already proposed, add specificity, or even suggest practical ways to take some of the recommendations forward. So, for policy and governance, the central issue from day one was really responsiveness. So, one important direction is to create a much stronger connection between skills intelligence and TVET policy and standards. This means making greater use of labor market information and real-time resources to identify changing occupations and skills requirements. So more importantly, that information should trigger timely review of competency standards, qualifications, and curricula. So if you look at number two, a related issue is governance. Digital TVET transformation does not sit in one institution. Actually, we've heard group number three talking about agencies working in silos, as well as budget allocations coming from different agencies. So um, digital TVET transformation involves several sectors. We have education, labor, and other digital agencies. Of course, we have industry, TVET institutions, the employers, and the workers themselves. So, day one recommends therefore, reinforce the need for a stronger coordination at the national level with clearer roles among these actors. At the regional level, perhaps the ASEAN TVET Council can provide a platform for coordination, peer learning, and alignment of digital TVET priorities. For number three, another important issue is responsible AI. As we begin using AI in teaching, in curriculum development, assessment, skills intelligence, and institutional management, we also need practical safeguards. Day one inputs point to operational guidance covering areas such as human review, privacy and security, transparency, bias and quality checks, and accountability for final decisions. So this is another area where national and regional action can complement each other. Countries, of course, will apply their own policies and regulatory frameworks. Perhaps at the ASEAN level, it could help develop common guiding principles or a reference checklist for national adaptation. For number four, they want also raise the challenge of comparability and the recognition of competencies and credentials across ASEAN. These reverberated in the presentation of Group 2. So rather than attempting to harmonize everything, one practical starting point could be to benchmark competency standards in selected priority occupations, perhaps, particularly those being rapidly transformed by digital technologies and AI. And finally, policy must address inclusion from the very beginning. I think Group 1 came in very strong on this, including Group 2, talking about uh, improving digital access. There was even a suggestion to work on digital access hubs, disability-friendly teaching methodologies and tools. So digital transformation can expand access, but it also could deepen existing inequality. So policies and programs, therefore, need to consider barriers related to connectivity, affordability, disability, gender, rural and remote locations, and MSME participation, of course, depending on national context. So for this priority area, day one inputs suggest a combination of national and regional action. National action remains central for policy, governance, and implementation, and regional cooperation adds value by enabling member states to benefit from shared skills, intelligence, benchmarking, common guidance, and peer learning. On the next slide, on operationalization and partnerships, um, this second priority area is really about moving from policy to implementation within TVET institutions. And one of the strongest messages from day one was that institutions are starting from different levels of digital readiness. The challenge is to avoid assuming that every institution needs the same technology or the same intervention. And a practical starting point is a digital readiness assessment. And I think this was mentioned by one or two of the three groups earlier. There are already existing tools, SERI, for instance, that can help assess institutions not only in terms of technology but also on teaching and operational processes, governance, staff capacity, capability, and data readiness. The important point really is that assessment should lead to action. The findings should be translated into prioritized institutional improvement roadmaps, and progress should be reassessed over time. So, for the second major issue, this one deals with people and capability. Digital transformation cannot be achieved through technology alone. TVET instructors, standard developers, administrators need the practical capabilities to use digital tools and AI effectively. And um, day one, therefore, points toward developing core digital and AI competencies for Tibet personnel supported by modular professional development. So I think it was group two was talking about training for digital trainers. And this could cover practical applications such as sorry, instructional design, assessment, skills intelligence, development, data use, and of course, responsible AI. So another strong message concerns industry and social partners. Kindly refer to number three. And group two was also talking about, industry boards earlier. So the direction emerging from day one is to move toward active co-development of skills. Industry and social partners can help develop and validate competency standards and curricula, support trainer development and work-based learning, and provide continuing information on changing occupational and skills requirements. So for number four, they one also highlighted the importance of maintaining human accountability when AI is used. So a practical approach is a human in the loop process. So AI supports development followed by technical review, revision, and expert or industry validation, and final human approval. Finally, number five, considerable innovation is already taking place across ASEAN, and different countries and institutions are developing readiness tools, curricula, instructional resources, AI applications, and implementation approaches. Rather than each country starting from zero, ASEAN could use exist as an uh, existing regional platform to create a community of practice, a repository of validated resources and lessons. So the recommendation really is not to create a large new mechanism, but it could begin with a small number of tested resources and priority areas and could build from there. Here again, there is a clear division of roles. Institutional transformation happens nationally and locally, but regional cooperation can facilitate transformation by allowing member states to share what works, adapt tested approaches, and avoid unnecessary duplication. And finally, we go to the last slide and third priority area, looking at financing and sustainability. The main message from day one is quite straightforward. Digital transformation goes beyond technology. Of course, this is important, but this is only part of the investment. So, sustainable transformation also requires staff, maintenance, etc., etc. And this means that procurement and investment decisions need to consider the full cycle and secondary costs of digital investments. And if you look at number two, a second issue is whether investment is addressing the actual constraint facing an institution. So this actually links to the digital readiness assessment at the institutional level that we have earlier discussed in priority area 2. So investment should be directed towards the constraint that has been identified by the institution rather than applying a uniform technology solution. And again, the third issue, if you look at number three, is sustainability. Digital transformation requires sustained financing rather than one-off project funding. So this points to a multi-year investment and budget provisions that account for recurring costs. And in number four, there is also a role for industry co-financing and co-investment. And I think this was also raised by Group 3. So government does not necessarily have to finance the entire transformation. We understand that budgets are constrained and limited. Perhaps in priority sectors, industry can contribute to training, equipment and the facilities, trainer development, work-based learning and standards, and curriculum updating. And finally, there is a regional financing question. So, some digital capacities may currently be developed separately by several member states when there could be inefficiencies from shared regional investment. I don't know if how this can be explored, but day one recommendation is therefore suggesting to identify perhaps two or three priority digital capacities that could be developed or supported regionally. This could be regional skills intelligence, AI assisted comparison of competency standards, shared instructional resources, and regional capacity development. And Group 3 mentioned sharing of practices using the ASEAN TVET Council as a platform. This could also provide a clearer focus for development partner support while still allowing national adaptation and maintaining national ownership. So the financing picture is somewhat different from the two priority areas. Most financing, of course, decisions will remain at the national level, but perhaps regional role could be more selective and strategic. Focus on areas where shared investments can reduce duplication, create economies of scale, and provide capabilities that benefit several member states. So, in closing, this day one indicative recommendations are not separate. They are intended to complement the results of the roundtable discussions. They reinforce many of the priorities already identified and provide additional practical actions and clarity on what can be taken forward, both at the national, regional levels, or at both levels. So, as we consolidate the results of this policy dialogue, we hope to draw on these day one inputs to strengthen and operationalize the recommendations from the RTD discussions. It is unfortunate that we may not have time for question and answer, but as what was mentioned by Anne, our colleagues here in TESDA, the presentations will be shared to the participants, and we hope until September 3, we will all have the opportunity to put in our inputs and our comments to further enrich the recommendations that we have generated in the last 2 days. Thank you very much and maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Miss Pam, for sharing the day one indicative recommendations and the complete picture of the 2-day dialogue. What an enriching and meaningful 2-day dialogue it has been. We hope that discussions and insights shared throughout this forum will continue to inspire meaningful action toward advancing the future of TVET in the ASEAN region. At this point, may we now hear the closing message from the TESDA Deputy Director General for Policies and Planning, DDG Rosana Urdaneta, CESO 2.
Distinguished delegates from our ASEAN member states, especially to our ASEAN TVET Council, focal points. Thank you for sharing your candor and expertise. And to our non-government agency members, the ASEAN Future Workforce Council, the ASEAN Confederation of Employers, the ASEAN Trade Union Council, and Simeo Voctec. Thank you for keeping this process true to ASEAN's multi-sectoral approach to TVET governance. Representatives from the national government agencies, industry partners across the education, economic, and labor sectors, our partners in development who have generously shared their time and expertise, the UNESCO Regional Office in Jakarta, and the European Training Foundation, our principal partners for TESDA's 2026 ASEAN Chairship activities, the International Labour Organization, and the GP-SET Recruitment Project. A special thank you for developing the integrated concept note that shaped this entire process, and for the months of preparation behind these 2 afternoons. This dialogue happened because you built it well. And of course, the ASEAN Secretariat, thank you for your continued guidance and support. A pleasant afternoon to all. We have reached the end of 2 productive afternoons. Over these 2 days, we asked a simple but urgent question. What does it take to build a workforce ready for a future none of us has fully seen? Day 1 gave us the evidence. We learned that artificial intelligence and digital technologies are changing tasks more than they are eliminating jobs, and that this change affects some workers more than others. The entry-level workers, informal economy workers, and those in rural and remote areas. We heard about larger ongoing initiatives such as the ILO Digital Skills Coalition, or DISCO, UNESCO's Global Skills Tracker, and innovation in lifelong learning from the European Training Foundation. Brunei Darussalam, Malaysia, and the Philippines shared what has worked in their own systems and why those systems are necessary. These initiatives are ripples, moving in the same direction, building into one way of digital transformation, now moving across ASEAN. They too showed us how to navigate the future together. 3 policy roundtables on policy and governance, operationalization and partnerships, and financing and sustainability. And as what ASEAN should actually do. The recommendations presented this afternoon show the value of interoperable digital standards and recognize digital credentials, institutional readiness, and ethical safeguards for AI in Tibet, and the financing models that leave no member state behind. This dialogue opens the process. It began with evidence generation, continued through this technical policy dialogue, and moves forward through the Regional Knowledge Sharing Forum on Gender, Diversity, and Inclusion this October, and the second Tibet Technical Policy Dialogue on Green Skills for the 2026 ASEAN Green Jobs Forum. All these stages come together at the high-level regional policy dialogue and the sixth ATC meeting here in Manila this October. Each stage builds on one before it, carrying forward what 11 member states and several partner organizations started here. The outcomes of this dialogue will feed into a joint statement. That statement will reflect ASEAN's shared commitment to digital transformation and workforce readiness in support of the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. It will be the main policy outcome of this process, launched at the ASEAN TVET Council commemorating event in October. It will also help shape the midterm review of the ASEAN Declaration on Human Resources Development for the changing world of work and its roadmap, and the ASEAN TVET Council Work Plan 2021 to 2030. What we discuss here will not stay as conversation. It becomes a commitment written into the region's own plans. ASEAN is made up of 11 countries, 11 nations, 11 systems, 11 starting points. The 2026 Philippine Chairship theme, Navigating Our Future Together, calls us to sail as one region on one ocean toward one horizon. President Marcos said that skills are the new currency, more valuable than oil and more enduring than gold. And we learned through this policy dialogue that currency has no value locked on a single country. It grows only when it moves across and between nations. Over these 2 days, this dialogue was that movement. 11 member states, one shared course, and one vision. That is ASEAN, skilled for the future. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay ang ASEAN.
Thank you, DDG Rose, for your message. And now, to document this important moment, may we kindly request everyone to please turn on your cameras for the photo opportunity. Please keep on smiling as there are 4 pages to be taken. We kindly request the tech team to facilitate the virtual photo opportunity. And now, as we conclude this two-day TVET policy dialogue on ASEAN Skilled for the Future, Digital Transformation and the Future of Skills, let us carry forward the insights and the ideas shared as we continue to shape a future where TVET is responsive to digital transformation, relevant to the evolving world of work, and valued by young people across the ASEAN region. As one of TESDA's ASEAN chairmanship events, this dialogue has provided an important platform for exchanging perspectives, sharing experiences, and strengthening regional cooperation on the future of skills. We are pleased to announce our upcoming events flashed on your screens. Before leaving the Zoom room, may we kindly request all participants to accomplish the evaluation form, which will be flashed later on your screens. And the link will also be provided in the chat box. Your feedback will help us further improve our programs and activities. The certificates of participation will be issued upon completion of the evaluation form. Once again, on behalf of the TESDA Secretary, Secretary Kiko Benitez, and our development partners from the GIZ Rico Twin Project and the International Labor Organization, we sincerely thank all our distinguished speakers, experts, partners, and participants for being part of this dialogue and for sharing your valuable insights and experience. We hope to see you again in our future events and our continuing efforts to advance TVET across the ASEAN region. We hope to see you around here in the Philippines. Thank you very much and have a great day.
A whisper in the breeze, it calls our name. Across the seas, we are the same. Through tides that rise, through storms that wane, we sail as one beneath the sun. One vision, one ocean, together in motion. We rise, we shine, we reach for the sky. One heart, one dream, through the waters we gleam. ASEAN, we are one till the end of time.
The stars above, they light our way from golden dawns to dusky grays. We weave the threads of hope today. With every shore, we dream for more.
One vision, one ocean, together in motion. We rise, we shine, we reach for the sky. One heart, one dream, through the waters we gleam. ASEAN, we are one till the end of time. One vision, one ocean, together in motion. We rise, we shine, we reach for the sky. One heart.
Gusto kong magsunod